Yes, and the people of Portland in Dorset are calling on the government to take religion out of any consideration around asylum claims.
Yes, this comes after it was revealed, get this, 1 in 10 residents of the Bibby Stockholm are regularly attending church services and are converting to Christianity in record numbers.
So to clarify, these are people who have arrived in the United Kingdom not saying they're Christian, and then suddenly deciding they're Christian once their asylum application has begun. Curious.
It's sceptical, Tom.
A little bit. The issue has been thrown into sharp relief after it emerged that the Clapham chemical attacker Abdullah Zaidi was allowed to stay in the country when a priest allegedly confirmed he had converted to Christianity.
Yes, our South West of England reporter Jeff Moody has the story for us.
In an age where attendance at church is at its lowest ever, the Weymouth Baptist Church is bucking the trend. Sunday services are packed with residents from the Bibby Stockholm. Out of the 300 asylum seekers that are currently on board the Bibby Stockholm, around 30 of them, that's 1 in 10, attend church services here at the Weymouth Baptist Church. 6 of them were baptised last weekend alone. A conversion rate that's almost biblical in scale, or a cynical ploy to help their asylum claims. The people of Portland think the latter. Martine Summers is petitioning the government to take issues of religion off the table when it comes to asylum.
We are a multicultural country. We welcome all sorts of religions. It shouldn't be a consideration at all as to what religion they are.
Father David Palmer is a Catholic priest. He thinks it's wrong to blame the church for these conversions.
I mean, ultimately, the Home Office is their job. It's not the job of the church to say, we think this person should or shouldn't stay in this country.
In a statement, Weymouth Baptist Church told GB News nearly all the men with whom we have contact became Christians in their native countries, all of which are known to be hostile to the Christian faith. It is in no one's interests to have bogus baptisms, for such baptisms would compromise the integrity of the church, would discredit the gospel we preach, and worse, would dishonour the name of Christ. But GB News has learned that some residents of the Bibby Stockholm have been told their asylum claims are unlikely to be successful, and Portlander Martine Summers believes this could be dangerous.
Some of these men may have to go back to their own country whereby Christianity is persecuted. So is the Christian church happy that effectively they could be sending these men back to persecution? They could possibly have blood on their hands.
It's a complex issue. Dr. Gavin Ashenden is an Anglican bishop and former chaplain to the late Queen.
The problem then develops when the state decides that becoming a Christian or the criteria of religion is going to be instrumental in asylum claims and immigration claims. But having done that, it doesn't take the trouble to work out what becoming a Christian means or how you can test that.
In last week's PMQs, Tory MP Tim Lawton launched an attack on the Archbishop of Canterbury.
Can I ask the Prime Minister, given that the Church of England has now issued secret guidance for clergy supporting asylum applications for these Damascene conversions, who is the Church accountable to, and are taxpayers being scammed by the Archbishop?
The Archbishop has hit back, saying it's the job of the government to protect our borders and of the courts to judge asylum cases. The Church is called to love, mercy and do justice. 3 bodies, 3 distinct roles. The Home Office now says it will launch an investigation into those roles. Meanwhile, the residents of the Bibby Stockholm find themselves in the eye of yet another storm. Jeff Moody, GB News.
Absolutely fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah, really fascinating. Shall we speak to former chaplain to Queen Elizabeth II, Dr. Gavin Ashenden, who was featured in that report? Gavin, the Archbishop of Canterbury has refuted these claims that the Church of England is running some sort of conveyor belt of baptisms. But it was last week that Reverend Matthew Thirth came out to give his first-hand experience of what he said was going on. And he said that there very much was a conveyor belt and perhaps the Church of England was turning a blind eye.
Well, I think that's right. I mean, I've been behind the curve too, partly because I was involved in some of this about 10, 15 years ago, and I didn't realize quite how things have changed. So there's quite clearly a conveyor belt scam going on. I have to say, it's not just about becoming a Christian. They're also using the idea of being gay and not therefore being sent back. So here are two ways of scamming the system. One saying you're a Christian, another saying you're gay. And it appears that not everyone is telling the truth. That shouldn't be any surprise to us. What's wrong, of course, is the way in which the whole system is being administered. And at the moment, everyone else is saying it's somebody else's fault. But we know, as people in the country, overwhelmed by levels of both legal and illegal immigration, the system's broken and it needs changing.
It is remarkable to read some of the examples of this. You mentioned people claiming homosexuality. The Telegraph reported just a few days ago that one asylum seeker halfway through his interview was claiming to be gay and stopped claiming it because he was so disgusted by the prospect. I mean, it really does boggle the mind. But today we learn about more to do with those who've been trying to convert to Christianity, not knowing what Easter is, not knowing when Christmas is, thinking Jesus had 10 disciples. This stuff is incredibly basic, and yet these people are being approved by the Home Office in many, many cases.
Well, I'm afraid blame is shared everywhere. It's easier to be critical if you have specific details, but I'm afraid I'm not entirely convinced by what Weymouth Baptist Church is saying. You're quite right. It wouldn't be very difficult to test how authentic the conversion was, but no one's doing it. So, and again, the problem, if you like, there's a difference between Catholicism and Protestantism, if I can be sectarian for a moment as a Catholic. As a Catholic, you have to go to Mass and go on going to Mass if you become one. But part of being a Protestant is it's the primacy of the individual conscience. You just say you're converted and you've become a Christian, and there's no mechanism to hold you to account for that afterwards. And what the situation is missing in every respect is a mechanism of accountability. So some churches are worse in it than others, but worst of all is the Home Office.
Gavin, what benefit would there be for these churches to be baptising these asylum seekers? Is there any benefit to the church itself? Why would they be doing this? I'm trying to get my head around the motivation. Is it genuinely that they just want more people in their congregations, or is there something else to this?
Well, so most situations have got vice and virtue in them. I mean, the virtue in this is that Christians want people to have the experience of knowing the reality of God, to being loved and loving Jesus, to have their natures transformed, to be set free by forgiveness. There's a whole load of reasons why we want to tell people about Jesus. The vice side of it is that Christianity is on the back foot. It's very unpopular in our culture. And if you can find more people to come to church, then you're going to want to make the most of it. The problem is we're in a kind of perfect storm, really. But I think, again, we're back to this issue of accountability. Things don't work when there's accountability, and this is really not working at all.
And yet, Gavin, to some extent, migrant communities are the most religious communities in Britain now. London is the most religious city in Britain by some measures. We see sort of attitudes perhaps not amongst asylum seekers in general, but certainly amongst migrant communities, to some extent becoming the backbone of faith in this country. That's a bit of a conundrum for some people.
Well, you're absolutely right, and it takes a while to work out what the implications of this are. My neighbours have given up on Christianity for all kinds of reasons, partly propaganda through the schools, and partly actually yourselves excluded media hostility. But whatever it is, Christianity throughout Europe is really having a very hard time functioning. But in the rest of the world, it's flourishing, and as the rest of the world comes to our country, so they bring with them authentic Christian faith, and the enormous amount of vibrant, determined, colourful, really sincere and excellent Christianity that immigrants are bringing in with them. It's, as you say, it's a conundrum and a paradox that the people who are really practicing the faith well happen to be not the indigenous English. It's just another example of the weird contradiction that this whole situation is throwing up.
Well, thank you very much indeed for talking to us. Dr. Gavin Ashenden, former chaplain to Queen Elizabeth II. Great to get your insight.